South Africa's government plans to create a drone register for all operated, distributed or sold drones, with a draft document open for public comment proposing mandatory registration. The South African Civil Aviation Authority currently regulates drones but is seen as under-resourced, causing licensing delays. The department suggests that SACAA's approach is outdated, needing modernization for the evolving drone sector. Let's get a bit of an understanding here. We've roped in aviation analyst Dr. Guy Leitch to help us understand all of this. So, Dr. Leitch, a pleasure to have you. When we talk about the evolution of regulations, how do you think South Africa's drone regulations, which were established back in 2015, should evolve to accommodate this rapid technological advancement and growing commercial drone usage?
Yeah, hi, Leanne, and good morning to you and your viewers. Well, actually, the regulations are actually evolving pretty well. In fact, they recently were reissued, redone just 18 months ago. So they are very much trying to keep up to speed with this rapidly evolving industry. The big question is, are they being effective or not? I think that's really what we should be discussing.
So let's discuss that. I mean, do you think they'd be effective? I mean, this risk-based approach that we're looking at, this regulatory framework focusing on factors like operational risk rather than just drone weight, enhanced safety and innovation in South Africa's drone sector. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, it's a very complex subject. So very quickly, let's try and understand that drones actually are hard to distinguish at face value from model aeroplanes and from toys. But the regulations actually have now catered for that, and we understand clearly what it requires to operate a drone. And one of the things that obviously requires to operate a drone is a pilot's license or drone pilot's license. And I think that the general concern right now is that the pilot's license is too difficult to come by. It's pretty much on a par with a full pilot's license for a full fixed-wing aircraft. Wow. And that's quite frankly just deterring many drone operators from operating legally. So they're just operating illegally. And then even worse is the problem of revolving around the drone operator certificate. Now, that is a certificate for somebody who wants to operate drones commercially. For instance, as a business, to do movie making or to do videos of properties for estate agents and so on, to operate the services commercially. That has been a massive backlog in the Civil Aviation Authority, and it's taking up to 18 months to get a drone operator certificate. Again, it means that a lot of the drones that we see are being operated illegally. And I need to point out that this is a real problem. I mean, we're as we've seen, or as you said in the introduction, many airports in Europe have recently been closed over the past week for unauthorized drone operations. And in the United States, a man has just been sentenced to, I think, 2 or 3 months in jail, plus an enormous fine for operating a drone to take photographs of firefighting aircraft. It actually collided with a firefighting aircraft. So the penalties are massive indeed, and the CAA needs to find the right balance.
Unbelievable. I mean, it is. So let me just ask you, I mean, if I want to go into a toy shop, because literally that's where you can find drones, what is the distinction? Because obviously there's the commercial and recreational use. But if I have a drone at home and I like to just fly this thing around and perhaps maybe take a picture or two, is that illegal if I don't have a license?
It has up to now depended upon the weight of the drone, and there's been basically a cutoff at around 400 kilograms. And there are also other limitations that are really important to bear in mind, most notably a height restriction of 400 feet. And then perhaps the most important is what's the abbreviation BVLOS, which stands for Beyond Visual Line of Sight. So you cannot operate a drone if you can't see it. Now, that obviously is in clear distinction to all the other drones that we've seen, for instance, in warfare, where they're flown from they're operated out of Nevada in the United States and are busy flying over Iran, for instance. So that's a very different, it's still a drone, but it's a very different category of drone. And the Civil Aviation Authority needs to understand the parameters within which toy drones are flown. Remember the confusion with toys and proper drones. But I also need to point out that all drones have to be registered. In fact, there are probably now more drones registered in South Africa than there are fixed-wing aircraft. So there's a huge drone a register already available. And every drone obviously has to carry its own registration number so people can see it. If it crashes, they can find out who it belongs to.
Yeah, this is a very big thing. And the reality, though, is I suppose South Africa balancing security concerns with the need for accessible drone operations, particularly regarding the passenger drones and the innovative solutions that might address some concerns about impractical commercial aviation-style security checks. Perhaps we can touch on that.
Well, yeah, I have to say you've probably asked the wrong chappie about passenger-carrying drones, because I remain a great cynic about them. I think that we're a long way from seeing the volocopters of this world actually providing a proper commercial service. And the real problem we have here is to integrate them with the actual air traffic, the normal air traffic, helicopters, and obviously fixed-wing aircraft. Because if they're operating autonomously, in other words, without a pilot, then how do they see and avoid other aircraft? This is a massive obstacle for them to overcome in what we call visual flight rules, which are this whole see and be seen idea. So air traffic controllers can't provide separation from them, and I think we're still many years from seeing effective commuting, if you like, with passenger-carrying drones. Yeah. But nonetheless, small drones are a very real problem right now. And indeed, because so many of the operators, I'd venture to say as many as 80 to 90% of the drones that are currently being flown are flown illegally, and often they're flown within 10 kilometers of an airport, which is obviously blatantly against the rules. And this is the issue that the Civil Aviation Authority has to address.
And that is a big thing, because I mean, you know, that's a very dangerous thing that can happen for aircraft. So, you know, people need to be aware of this. But you know, there's also, and again, I maybe touching on another issue, because we are seeing these drones, I mean, from being these things that would take photographs or be used for recording purposes and, you know, whatever else, they have evolved so much. And I mean, when we talk about the respective wars that unfortunately are happening, whether we talk about what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, we talk about Israel, and I mean, what we saw happening in Qatar and in, you know, Gaza, these are drones that we talk to as well. So there are so many different aspects of the drone use, and that's why I imagine when we look at international law, there has to be very strict regulations around them.
But very much so, because what we're really looking for is a much greater level of sophistication than even self-drive cars. And self-drive cars are enormously complex if you think about all the variables that they have to deal with. Drones in particular then have to be able to integrate with airspace, and they have to be able to identify potential threats in terms of aircraft collisions and then be able to avoid them, because you can't expect the pilot who's, you know, obviously got his hands full or is busy having to see and avoid a tiny little drone. But if those drones get, you know, hit the aircraft on the nose or in the engines, they can be a very real problem indeed. That case I mentioned in the States, it cost, I think, $300,000 to fix the aircraft, which the drone pilot had to pay for. And here's the question. I mean, to qualify for a drone pilot's license in South Africa, you've got to show that you're medically fit. You've got to be able to show that you can speak English to level 5. And there are stiff technical exams to pass. Because of this, so many are operating unregulated, that there's absolutely no control over them. My argument right now is that there should be different tiers of drone regulation, so you can control the toy drones as well as control, obviously, the potentially man-carrying drones or the drones involved in warfare and so on. It's those bigger drones which are obviously in conflict with airspace. Drones operating below 300 or 400 feet shouldn't be a threat to aircraft, but they are a threat to so much else, including privacy and security.
Yeah, so interesting. I know there's just so much more to talk about. Does the South African Civil Aviation, do they need help? Is there somebody that can step in to assist them? Because at the end of the day, there's such a backlog. It's a lot of work.
No, this is not a new problem. They've had this problem for 7-8 years at least now. So they have been a little slow in manning it and staffing it. Look, I mean, also they have had the excuse of COVID having really flattened their income and resources to be able to do that. but they've had plenty of time to rebuild since then. And drones are here. The drones are the future, and the future is here. So they really do need to be able to make sure that they can control these. Now, the problem with the Civil Aviation Authority is that they often tend to over-regulate, and that means that if they wanted to take all the risk out of it, then no one would be able to fly a drone at all, and that would be this excessive over-regulation. So they've got to find this correct balance appropriate for the correct level of drone operation. The regulations, the newest regulations, do make provision for that, but there's a long way to go before we can properly and effectively and safely manage drone operations in this country.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Thanks so much for giving us a better understanding. Aviation analyst Dr. Guy Leitch talking to us about South Africa and these tighter drone rules. Can we cope with it? And as you heard, so many people are breaking the rules when it comes to the usage of drones.